Story 1. I notoriously overthink my relationships to an obsessive-compulsive disorder extent. I know my girl is the one because no matter what headspace I am in, I know I would do anything to make her bad days better. It is the most selfless I have felt towards a person. Story 2. Every guy has a type. In my case, it was always artsy, neurotic, fragile types. Yeah, I know. This woman walked up to me at a party and said, "I have to meet the fool who bungee jumped off a bridge in New Zealand." It didn't matter that she wasn't like any other woman I had ever dated. It was as if a door had opened, and all I had to do was step through it. I knew immediately. We talked for a solid hour while her poor blind date looked helplessly on. Our first date was a week later, engaged 3 months after that, married 10 months from the day we met. That was 34 years ago. When, truthfully, if you have to talk yourself into a long-term relationship, or if you're just in a relationship out of inertia, then move on and find someone else. Story 3. It felt easy to make her happy. No acting, no need to triple-check what I was going to say or do. There was no question about whether she was being genuine or just humoring me. Every time there was an opportunity to choose spending time with me or getting an easy out, she always chose me. Every interaction felt comfortable, like being wrapped in a blanket on a cold evening by the fire. It was different from every other relationship I had been in. Story 4. I didn't buy a ring until I was looking at my checking account balance one day and realized I had an extra $1,000 that I didn't know what to do with. I hadn't been saving up. I just hadn't kept track of it much because I was a pizza delivery driver and mostly used cash. The first thought I had was that I would buy her a ring. Not something for myself, not to pay off a debt, not for savings. But really, it was one of our first dates. We drove to a tulip festival in Washington State where we lived at the time. We spent all day together, joking and enjoying ourselves. When we got back, I realized I wanted to keep hanging out with her. Even though we didn't live together. She's one of the only people I've ever met that I don't get tired of being around. We have our fights, sure, but we might take 30 minutes or an hour apart and both come back apologizing. 14 years and 9 years of marriage later, and I still never get sick of her. Story 5. I have an anxiety and panic attack disorder. The first time I had a panic attack in front of her, I felt like it was over. I had a huge amount of shame around this and suffered alone. I went through many extra steps in my life to ensure that I always had an exit to get away from people in case I felt a panic attack coming on. But this time I was unable to get away, and she had to help me get through it. I couldn't even look her in the eye afterward. I was just hiding from her for a few days, but she kept texting me and telling me that whatever was wrong. She hoped I would be able to talk to her and looked forward to when we could spend time together. Eventually, I opened up to her, and in that moment, I felt like the farthest thing from a man as I perceived a man should be that I could possibly feel. But she didn't do anything to make me feel that way. It was all in my head, and for the first time in my life, I realized that it had always been in my head. I had always assumed that people would think less of me. I realized it was my warped definition of what manly is that was the problem. Story 6. Sometimes words cannot express how she makes me feel. Safe, secure, and grounded. I am a big man, and she is a tiny person. Yet when I am unwell, she always looks after me. Mostly, I never ask as I work through the pain. It is like she can read my mind and adjusts accordingly. I genuinely have no idea what I would do without her. I cannot imagine my life without her. Story 7. She told me one day, "Hey, spending the rest of my life with you would be pretty awesome." And I agreed. Story 8. It was simple for me. I didn't want to be the other man. I didn't want to see her deep into her career, living in an amazing home, playing with her children, and just living her life with someone else. I needed that man to be me. She was incredible, and I wanted to be near her forever. It was a time to be mildly selfish. One day, it hit me unexpectedly that it was up to me to be that man in the future. I proposed the next day. 13 years of marriage and 2 children later, I am that man. Story 9. When she turned around and gave me the most amazing smile ever. 35 years later, she still gives me that smile. Story 10. She captivated me. I was thrown off balance by her spirit and her vivaciousness. She cares for me every day and makes me want to be a better person. I love her sincerely and completely. Story 11. I was with my ex for 9 years. We got engaged during that time, but we never really made concrete plans to get married. We sort of just went along with life as the years passed without ever having the feeling of, I need to marry this woman. A few weeks after we broke up, she was having an affair. I met my now wife. I was obviously just out of a long-term relationship and still reeling from the shock of discovering the affair, essentially piecing my life back together. I certainly wasn't looking for the one. We met for a casual night together in a hotel. She was happily single, and I needed to blow off some steam. It was a mutually beneficial situation with the agreement that if it just turned out to be a one-off, we'd have a good time and go on with our lives. Well, we had a wonderful night together and ended up staying all night and waking up together the next morning. There was an instant connection that I've rarely experienced. I'm not particularly extroverted, and as I get older, I've become less and less of a people person. But despite having only known her a few hours, I was instantly at ease. For the first time in weeks, I was able to relax. That morning, we slept together again. I looked down at her. Our eyes met, and I vividly remember having the thought, I'm never letting you go. I told her as much. She smiled and simply said, okay. From that point on, we were basically inseparable. We bought a house together within a year. I proposed the day we got the keys, and we got married this year. I can't give you a concrete answer on how I knew. I just did. I guess all I can say is that if you don't know, then maybe she isn't the one. Story 12. I was cooking us dinner and listening to music. A song I had never heard came on, and I imagined her in a wedding dress walking towards me. I began to sob and knew it was time to ask her to marry me. We had our first dance to that song at our wedding 2 years later. Story 13. On our first date, she ate 2 racks of ribs and a baked potato. That's when I knew. Story 14. Took her on a date to a hockey game. A fight broke out on the rink, and she stood up and threw her hands out while singing along to Let the Bodies Hit the Floor. I knew I could not let her go. 18 years together now. Story 15. When I wanted to hang out with her instead of my closest friends. Story 16. Because she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen in my life, and at the time my job included interviewing movie stars, so I had a basis for comparison. That fact was the least interesting thing about her. She turned out to be smarter and far more sensible than I was, and I very quickly realized that she was the whole package as a human. Besides, just being with her made me happy and still does. I knew a couple of months in that we were going to get married. She tells me she knew after our first date. Either way, our 30th anniversary is next year. Story 17. The second I started talking to her online, I knew it was different. I cannot explain it. I just knew I should not mess that up. It has been over 20 years now, and I love her even more. Story 18. After our third date, we haven't spent more than 24 hours apart. 8 years married now. After the first date, I counted the hours until the second date, then practically the minutes until the third. Prior to her, I had a couple of girlfriends and went on several first dates. Each of those were spent weighing the pluses and minuses of the relationship or wondering what to do for the second and third dates. With my now wife, the second and third dates weren't about what to do but how to extend them so they would last as long as possible. Everything came naturally. I didn't feel the need to fluff my resume. Just being myself felt right. Her being herself was just right. Story 19. Not married yet, but she is the only woman I have ever met or been with who without fail lights a fire in my chest when I see her every time. I get goosebumps, my heart rate rises a little, and the dopamine rush hits. It does not matter if it is 5 minutes, hours, days, or months. It happens every single time. We could have a nasty fight, and an hour later when we sit down to talk it out, it hits me like a truck. Story 20. On our third date, she asked if I was seeing anyone else, and I truthfully told her I was not. Moments later, I realized I would never want to, because I had just clicked with her so naturally. I didn't see it until then. A couple of years later, she told me that she thought the very same thing on that same date. Our 5-year anniversary is next week, and December will mark 10 years together. Story 21. My now wife was the only one I wanted to be around. I had to be reminded that I had other friends. Her presence makes me happy, and I am always a better person when I am with her. Story 22. I realized that I did not care if we had sex as long as I woke up next to her. Story 23. The exact moment I knew was when she beat me at Star Wars Trivial Pursuit. Story 24. When I realized that both of us were completely being ourselves, there was no need to censor ourselves or live up to some unreasonable expectation. The love they prefer to receive is not a chore, and the love they give you is more than you could have imagined. Story 25. Before meeting my wife, I remember dating women and constantly rehearsing how I wanted conversations to go. I was always concerned about trying to act a certain way. When I met my wife at a party, we just clicked. Conversations were natural, and I was completely myself with no fear of being goofy or nerdy, which I really am. I moved back home when my father passed away. I recall my mother asking, "What in God's name do you two talk about? All you do is laugh nonstop." My mother was extremely happy, seeing how I had been in a very toxic relationship during high school. My friends noticed that my personality had greatly improved. One of my female friends pulled my girlfriend aside and said, "You are exactly what he has been looking for." I know because my friend told me she said it. I agreed with her 100%. After 4 months of dating, we moved in together. After 11 months, we got engaged, and after 1.5 years, we were married. Now, we have 2 kids and are going to celebrate 15 years of marriage next month. Story 26. She was the same person on date 10 as she was on date 1. She was almost the same girl when we lived together as when we were not living together. All of that was a first for me. Story 27. I could be my unique self with her, and she was still interested. Story 28. We accidentally went on a date when I went to pick up some money she owed me. She, her boyfriend, and their roommate were all friends of mine and needed to move because their lease was up and rent was being raised by several $100s. I was supposed to move into a bigger place with them. They had a party one night, and I came by to drop off my application and money for the application fee. I intended to stay for a drink and then go home early because I had a wedding to attend the next day. She clearly had something bothering her, so when we were alone for a minute on their back patio, I asked what was wrong. She told me she wasn't happy, didn't want to be with her boyfriend anymore, and was interested in somebody else. I spent the rest of the night trying to talk her through it, thinking they were great together and could still work it out. However, the more she told me, the more I realized I had no idea who he really was. He had had a months-long affair with a girl who was still in high school while she was paying all their bills. He was a compulsive liar and had been emotionally abusing her for years. The guy she was interested in turned out to be me. Still, I tried to convince her to at least consider going to a relationship counselor with him and told her in no uncertain terms that I would never want to come between the two of them. It all came to a head when he finally came out to the patio and berated her for abandoning him while he, unbeknownst to either of us, got too drunk and vomited in the bathroom. He told her she had 5 minutes to convince him not to end things right then. She told him no. I ended up telling him I had just spent the whole night trying to convince her not to leave him, but there was nothing I could do for him now. 2 days later, it was clear they were officially done, and I was broke and really needed that $35 back for the application fee that clearly was not going to be used now since, without her, he couldn't afford his share of the rent. She was the one I had given it to, so I texted her and asked if I could meet her for coffee when she got off work and get the money back. I also wanted to check on her and make sure she was okay since her now ex-boyfriend had become erratic and was acting like he might get violent. I had learned from some other friends that he was every bit the terrible person she had made him sound like. That quick cup of coffee turned into us chatting for hours outside Starbucks. Then I asked if she wanted to get a drink. While we were at the bar, I learned she had lived in Virginia Beach for over 3 years and had never even visited the oceanfront. We were only a few minutes away, so that needed to be corrected immediately. Soon we were at the boardwalk hitting the tourist traps, then walking along the beach, and finally climbing up into a lifeguard stand where we could look out at the stars over the ocean. There was a shooting star. If it were a movie, it would be too cliché to believe. We sat up there talking for a few hours. Then, before I knew what had happened, She had slid right next to me, and my arm was around her. I knew this had gone way beyond the casual friendship we had a few hours earlier. We looked at each other, and I told her if we weren't careful, we were about to cross a line we could never go back from. By the time I finished that sentence, I knew we'd crossed it before we finished our overpriced lattes. When we kissed, we both knew it was right. By the time I walked her back to her car, I knew that was my last first kiss. It has been 14 years since what we call our accidental date. I swear I didn't consciously know what I was doing when I asked her for coffee. But deep down I know a part of me had fallen for her when I was still trying to come up with reasons she should give one last chance to the guy she was clearly too good for. I was too guarded and stubborn to let myself see it. Story 29. She puts up with my never-ending nonsense. 23 years strong. Story 30. When I couldn't imagine what it would be like not to be with her and to have her in my life, that is when I knew. I have been married for 33 years so far. Story 31. She had an aura of calmness, intelligence, and full awareness of everything, which is extremely rare in both men and women. Story 32. She blindly supported me and made me want to be the best version of myself. We also have an incredible amount of fun together, and nothing makes me happier than seeing her happy. I also like her breasts. Story 33. On our first date, I told her I was still seeing other girls and that we were not exclusive yet. She replied, "That is your choice. You are the only person I am focused on right now." I instantly knew she was my forever. Story 34. She did not understand Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Not a single snicker, not even a smirk. She did not stay awake through the end. Yet that was not a deal breaker. I did not question wanting to be with her. To this day, she still does not understand it at all. Story 35. All these writings are beautiful. They gave me hope that my future husband will see me in a similar light as well. Story 36. When I passed gas in front of her, she did not say, "Ugh, that is gross." She just laughed. Story 37. I've been with my wife for 7 years now, married for 2. From early on, I knew this relationship was very different from any I had been in before. I felt encouraged and supported. My love and affection were accepted and also returned in kind. When we met, I was determined to avoid relationships and marriage after being hurt before. My wife is a free spirit and loves dancing and moving to music wherever she is. Often, the store Kmart plays music inside. Early on, this embarrassed me a little because I was self-conscious about people looking at me, but I never told her because I always loved her carefree attitude. Quickly grew on me. The day I knew was when I caught her dancing when she did not think I was watching. I couldn't take my eyes off her. I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life watching her dance, and dancing with her now. Story 38. Understand this was back in 1978. I, male 15 at the time, was hanging out with a buddy of mine. He wanted to go see his girlfriend and asked if I wanted to tag along. I said sure, and we went to her house. When we walked into his girlfriend's house, he introduced me to her and started introducing me to her family. Most of them were in the dining room playing cards. His girlfriend's little sister, female 12 at the time, was at the table as well. When our eyes met, I fell in love immediately. I couldn't stop thinking about how beautiful she was. The next day, I asked my buddy if he was going to see his girlfriend that evening, and he said yes. He asked if I wanted to go with him since I had told him I really liked his girlfriend's sister. I said I sure do. We went and I had a chance to talk to her. We talked until her dad flashed the porch light, their signal for them to go inside. That was 47 years ago. I'm just as much in love with her now, if not more, as I was then. Story 39. Pure chance. I was breaking fast during Ramadan one day at a friend's house. His wife jokingly said, "You need to get a wife." I agreed. She said, "Oh, I noticed in your Facebook comments there was a girl you were engaging with. Do you know her well?" I said, "Not in person," even though I liked her way of thinking and reasoning on political issues in the Arab world at the time. She said, "Well, she is my best friend from high school, and you two could get along very well." 2 or 3 weeks later, I took a little risk and sent her a direct message asking her for brunch. She said okay. We met around 10 a.m. That brunch lasted until almost 6 p.m. literally the next day. I asked her if she wanted to get married. She said yes. 5 months later, we were a married couple. 8 years later, we still are and very much in love. Story 40. Of all my exes, she was the one with whom I could be most myself. Of course, we started off with walls and tried not to scare her off by being too obvious about bad habits, but every time we hung out, it was just so easy and relaxed. We didn't need to have an agenda or a specific plan, but just loved hanging out together. Story 41. She was the first girlfriend I ever had who accepted me as the person I am. Not once have I felt that I couldn't be myself around her. Maybe I am just an unpleasant person, and my wife is really patient. Story 42. She was very relaxed, easy to talk to, and open in communication. The total opposite of ex-partners who would take things personally and could not handle sarcasm, so I always had to tread lightly around them. I never felt I could be myself, but this is not the case now. We have been together for 16 years. Story 43. I was in college, starting my junior year. She walked into the office as a new employee in the department I was working in. As she was being introduced to everyone, I stood up to shake her hand. I thought to myself, you never know when you are meeting the person you are going to marry. Apparently, I did know. We got married about 18 months later and have been married for over 30 years now. Story 44. She? No, she is not here. For me, it was when I considered a hypothetical situation of leaving him and being with another man, and I really had no interest in doing so. He is one of the most selfless people I have ever met, enjoys playing video games with me, traveling with me, is very sexually compatible, drinking wine with me, grilling and drinking beer with me, and just being a perfect team. Story 45. I thought about what life would be like without her, and I did not like it. Story 46. My stomach fits into the curve of her back like puzzle pieces. Story 47. I had an extremely detailed dream when I was 10 that I have never forgotten, unlike almost every other dream I have. In it, I was walking hand in hand with a woman I knew was my wife, and I knew we had been together many years. Fast forward to March 18, 1999. I was at work and had been asked to be on the interview hiring panel for an open position with whom I would be working closely. Most of the candidates were unremarkable until she walked in. 5 feet 3 inches of curvy red-headed attitude. Two things happened almost immediately. I recognized her as the woman from my dreams so many years before, and it was like someone flicked a switch that changed the movie from black and white to full color. We became immediate friends and talked all the time, even outside of work. About a year later, her marriage fell apart at the same time mine did for unrelated reasons, and we spent a lot of time commiserating. One thing led to another. 24 years of deep friendship followed. She is my absolute favorite person in the world, and together we have raised 4 amazing children. We have survived nearly everything the world could possibly throw at a couple and come out the other side. House fires, homelessness twice, health crises, car crashes, job loss, her twin sister's death. We are a team. She is the best. Story 48. When I felt her care and love as I opened up about depression, anxiety, insecurities, and my fears. No judgment from her, only love, compassion, and patience. She made me feel safe and cared for just by being present with me. She never tried to fix me, but showed me she would always be in my corner to cheer me on. She helped me discover the missing puzzle pieces of my being. She kept me tethered to earth when I felt like I was floating away. She loved me unconditionally and as a human. I felt seen, heard, and understood, something I had never really felt, even when I took on a new project or hobby. She never faltered. 8 years later, a house, 2 dogs, 2 cats, 1 3-year-old, and another on the way. I have never been so at peace and proud of my reality. I am in no way perfect, but she makes me realize it is a beautiful thing to be imperfect and driven to grow. Love you, Boop. Story 49. Threads like these have really opened my eyes to how loving and emotional men can be. I grew up without a dad, brothers, or any close male friends, and being on Reddit has been truly eye-opening in terms of learning how deeply men feel. Story 50. No one challenges me like she does. I get a stat boost in all categories due to her existence in my life. Not only does she make me better, she is my voice of reason in my otherwise head in the clouds world. The only constant I see in my future is her. On top of all the deep qualities, she is an amazing cook and mother. Intelligent, rational, and great with money, she is a powerhouse and balances me out very well. Story 51. I met her and didn't feel the need to impress her, so I was just myself. She asked about my job and I told her I had just started a business and wasn't making much money, but she was still interested in talking. The more I got to know her, the more comfortable I felt just being me. I didn't have to try to impress her, nor did I have to put up any walls. The more I was myself around her, the more she wanted to see me and spend time with me. She is also a total knockout and gets a lot of attention from guys, but she only ever had eyes for me. She wanted to spend time together often, and I never felt like she was too clingy or pushy when we dated. To have someone so beautiful, who has many admirers, treat you like you're the center of her universe is a huge confidence booster and very reassuring in a relationship. When I met her family for the first time, they made me feel warm and welcomed, like I was part of the family with no judgment. Everything felt absolutely right. It's hard to describe exactly, but it was a mixture of love, peace, and contentment all tied into one. We talked about our goals for the future very early on, as well as our morals and values, and everything aligned perfectly. We were both able to have deep and intelligent conversations, which was very important to me. When I learned she had a medical condition that wouldn't allow her to get angry or she would pass out, I realized how impatient I could be sometimes and tried to emulate her emotional intelligence to be a better man. The final thing that made me realize she was the one and pop the question is that she has a list of medical conditions that means she will never be totally independent and will always require some level of supervision and care. I never saw it as a deal breaker. About 6 months into the relationship, I realized there were many things I had to do for her. Make her food, drive her places, help her up and downstairs, hold her hair when she was sick, and be careful with what I ate or kept in the house so as not to get her sick, which required a lot of hand washing. There were also lifestyle changes. She couldn't stand in one place too long or she would faint, so festivals, concerts, physical activity events, and long drives had to be limited. She passed out on my motorcycle, so I had to get rid of it. What got me was that none of that ever felt like a burden. It never upset me to drive her home, over an hour and a half round trip, on a work night when she wasn't feeling well, or carry her through church when she passed out, or change plans because it was too hot and she would faint in the heat. None of it ever felt like a burden. My only concern was her health, safety, and comfort until she recovered. She is now my wife. I love her more than anything and would trade everything for her. I don't care that I won't be able to do some things for the rest of my life or that I have signed on to be a partial caretaker because I wouldn't trade her for anyone else. She is my other half and the love of my life. Although I've been in many serious relationships, I've never had the feelings I have for her. I am the luckiest guy in the world. Story 52. I had just finished a long drive taking us to our vacation destination. We got to the hotel, and I flopped on the bed, still fully clothed. Shortly after, she snuggled behind me and wrapped her arms around me. We just lay like that together, not saying anything. I started to reflect on our relationship. That is when I finally noticed that in all the time we were together, she was always pulling me closer, never pushing me away, always accepting and understanding, sometimes questioning but never doubting. I did not know to call it unconditional love yet, but at that moment, I finally saw her as a future wife and not just a girlfriend. Story 53. Mentally stable and easy to be around. No anxiety. She is my Morticia. I would crawl over broken glass for her. Story 54. No singular moment defined it. It was consistency in how she showed up to the relationship. I proposed when I could fairly safely assume that she was committed to her own self-development and growth. If someone is truly trying to be a better version of themselves, then most problems can be worked out. Emotional intelligence is the primary foundation needed for a solid relationship. Story 55. We went on a cruise together with my extended family. We had been together for about 9 months, and this was the first time she was meeting my aunts, uncles, and cousins. They loved her. She handled it with grace, And at that point, I realized I should probably start saving for a ring. Story 56. When I realized that if she accidentally became pregnant, I would be perfectly okay with it. Story 57. I had been through a few one-sided relationships and decided to be done for a while. My friend got me a job on a fishing boat, and I packed my bags, then said my goodbyes to everyone over a few days. I invited one of my good friends over for dinner, but he said he would only come if his visiting sister could tag along. No problem for me. I finished making dinner and cleaned up when they walked in. I greeted my friend, and when his sister walked in, I couldn't even look at her directly. I was bashful. I had never been bashful in my entire life. I felt bad about my attraction because she carried an adorable 11-month-old child. So I thought she was married. We had a great dinner, and it was even better having the little one there. Partway through the evening, she mentioned that she wasn't married and that she was at my place to inquire about a friend of hers. I couldn't care less about her friend. I was curious about how someone could make me feel the way she did. 45 days later, we married. I became an instant dad, and it has been almost 27 years. I am so grateful. I cannot even express how grateful I am. She still looks at me that way, and I still feel bashful. Story 58. When we started dating, I didn't have a job and was so poor my bedroom furniture was a bunch of old avocado crates that some fruit vendors had abandoned in the streets. She didn't care, even though we lived in a country where everyone would care about that. When I was looking for work, she would wake up at 4 a.m. to iron my suit before interviews and make me breakfast. I didn't ask her to do this, nor did I expect her to. No one had ever done anything so thoughtful for me before. She even printed my resume on flyers and passed them out to hundreds of people in her social network. We traveled around the country and never had one fight while traveling. One day, while taking the bus, I thought, are there any cons at all to staying with this person? I couldn't find any, so I asked her to marry me shortly after. Of course, we have had fights like any other couple, but she is definitely my person. We have been happily married for about a decade. Story 59. I was in the military. I went all through school with her, but she now lived a couple of states away. I would go see her when on leave visiting home. My birthday rolled around. She rode a Greyhound bus to see me. We went to a party for a friend of mine. They were cooking a whole pig in a pit in the ground. My now wife was helping a woman with 2 children feed one of the babies while drinking a bottle of Jack Daniel's straight. She helped cook the pig. She was already very attractive, but seeing her juggle feeding a baby, cooking the pig, and drinking Jack Daniel's straight made me see hearts like a cartoon. I asked her to marry me that night. It was 15 years ago. We have 2 teenage boys now. Story 60. It is not a thing I knew, it is a thing I felt. Every time I thought about what I knew, I came up with dozens of reasons not to do it. But the feeling was instantly familiar from the moment we met, in a way that I have never felt with anyone else. She became the air I breathed. You never think about how you know you need the air. Story 61. 9 months, and I could not imagine my life without her. We also had so much in common. Story 62. Because I loved her. Because there were no reasons to end it. Because she made me happy. Because I realized that it would be wonderful to spend every day for the rest of my life with her. Story 63. She had mutual respect for me. She noticed the small things. She cared about my thoughts and feelings. We had a similar future in mind. Most importantly, I saw her being a part of that future. Story 64. I was a mess when we met. She accepted me for who I was and did not try to change me. However, I did change for the better and I never felt pushed. We have been married for 19 years now. Story 65. We went on 3 dates and then took a 2-week road trip together, camping out of my truck. There was never an argument or disagreement. It was just a great time. She moved in as soon as we got back. We have been together for 10 years as of January and married for 8 years next week. We still go on road trips, we almost never argue, and I love her more every day. Story 66. She was the one I was willing to change for, and that is how I knew. It was the best decision I have ever made. Story 67. When she drove over 90 miles from her place to pick me up at the airport on a weekday at 11 p.m., I could have easily taken a train, which would have left me just across the street from where I used to live. After dropping me off, she headed back to her place. That was a wonderful act of love. The whole trip was around 3 hours. She got home around 1:30 a.m. and had to start getting ready for work at 6 a.m. Story 68. I am so single but very happy for you all with the cute stories here. Story 69. She made me want to be better while not making me feel bad for not being perfect. She respected me and showed me that she loved me. She encouraged me in my hobbies and continued with her own. Story 70. A little late, but I'll weigh in. Honestly, it was just a true gut feeling I had when we first met. Every time our eyes met, we just smiled and awkwardly looked away. We have been together for 11 years now and married for 4. Story 71. It was that smile. Not a big toothy grin or a laughing smile, but a slight smile that she had when she was content. It was like seeing light for the first time, like a drink of water after a lifetime in the desert. She made me feel safe and happy with who I was. I no longer thought about it was us. She wasn't an extension of myself. She was a part of me I didn't know was missing. Story 72. My wife had not seen many important movies like Goodfellas or Heat or just solid action ones. She thankfully hates romance movies, so she always lets me pick as I am a film and history enthusiast. Early in our relationship, she was at my place and we were watching Fury. During one of the early battles, where they attack the German pack guns in the Treline and the tracers go back and forth, she says, "Hey, pause it. What's up, babe? Too violent? I can turn it off and we can watch something else." I appreciate. No, this movie is amazing. I love it and all the facts you give as it goes along. Hit play. It wasn't a big moment for her, but at that moment, I knew I was onto something special. Story 73. I asked my husband this question. He told me that there was not a single moment that made him realize, but a series of moments. He said he loved that we grew together and continue to grow with each other. Today is our 5th wedding anniversary, so I am glad I got to ask him this. Story 74. Before our first date, I was getting ready to leave when one of my cats knocked an entire bottle of cologne onto my bathroom floor, cracking it wide open and dousing me. I jumped back into the shower in a panic and explained to my date that I would be a little late, giving a brief apology. She said no problem. I arrived at the date still smelling like my cat had splashed an entire bottle of cologne on me. My date downplayed it and we connected really well. Later in our relationship, she admitted the smell was still pretty strong, but luckily, she loved my cologne. At one point, I made a light, mildly self-deprecating comment completely in jest. I don't remember what it was. She immediately noticed a possible insecurity. The woman I had known for less than an hour looked me in the eye and said she didn't see it that way, then gave me the nicest compliment. I was at a loss for words, which never happens. I had never met anyone so effortlessly kind and sincere. It short-circuited my brain. After we finished a wholesome 4-hour Sunday evening date, I realized I felt an excitement and comfort with this person that I had never felt before. I had been on many dates and in several long relationships where marriage was discussed, but this was just different. Ultimately, this small act was just another sign of her boundless capacity for love and compassion. She is the sweetest and most empathetic person I have ever known, always wanting to be kind to everyone. I told my parents about a month later that she was the one. They met her, loved her instantly, and I proposed a year later. It was the best decision of my life. My parents were happily married for 43 years, and my dad used to say that when the right person comes along, you won't be able to do anything about it. He was absolutely right. She built me up every time we were together and showed thoughtful appreciation and effort at every step of the relationship. No games, just a big heart. Keeper. Story 75. She can fish really well. She cut the yard. She can cook. She is a neat freak and a real freak sometimes. She has been through hell and back, just like most of us. Winner. She does not even know that I feel this way. I tell her I never want to get married again. Story 76. I often wonder how my husband would respond to these questions. All of the responses are so sweet and heartfelt. Story 77. I had been in the military and came home to visit before starting my new job. My first night home, I ran into a woman I had known in school and her sister. We chatted for a bit, and then I left. After that, I ran into the woman who became my wife everywhere I went. Grocery store, restaurant, shopping, gas station, even the bowling alley. After a while, it felt like something was sending me a message. I asked her out, and by the third date, I could not imagine not being together. For children and 30 years later, I still feel the same way. Story 78. We had a fascinating conversation on our first date, and she has never stopped fascinating me. The fact that she is also the most beautiful woman I have ever seen is just a bonus. Story 79. She is the only person I never got tired of. No matter how much time we spent together or talked to each other, it was never enough. She was and is everything. Story 80. I didn't know when we met. I found out when I was in poor health and she was there for me through it all. Story 81. Simple. I do not much care for most people. At some point in our relationship, I could not imagine not having her in my life. Story 82. She made me laugh and smile whenever I was with her and still does. We started going out on January 11th, 2005. I went to her place and kind of did not leave. We went on holiday to Mexico 6 weeks later, and after joking about being married, I proposed on the DJ's microphone in a Cancun reggae bar, and she said yes. We got married in August 2005, and next year we will have been married 20 years. We have a laugh, chat often, and face life together. Although things can get tough, we are there for each other. To be honest, I would be terrible at half the things my wife does for us at home. Story 83. This is the most unusual question I have ever seen asked on this website because of what really happens here. Story 84. We lived together for almost 6 months during the first 2 years of dating. I saw her quirks and she saw mine. She has put up with me, and I have done the same for her. She does the little things and I feel it every day. Therefore, I put a ring on it. We are going for 8 years of marriage this November. Story 85. It was more of a gut feeling, one difficult to describe. You just know. Story 86. There was a way she grinned on our second date that made me realize she was the one. She probably grinned that way on our first date, but I didn't notice because I was an intensely nervous wreck. The following years were when I was able to cement the feeling I had with one green flag after another. We agree on the things that matter most. We disagree on a lot, but in a polite way that doesn't put the other down. We've been together nearly 5 years and have never descended into a fight. It's hard to boil it down to something like this. But I'm orderly and she's chaotic, and we have each other for balance. She makes life fun and interesting, and I bring responsibility and order so things don't get too out of hand and hurt us later. I don't like speaking for people, but we are very happy. Story 87. She just connected into my life seamlessly. We liked science fiction, comics, art, intimacy, and music. She never asked for the ring and did not want a big wedding. She never made any demands of me. No matter what came our way, she was there. When the things she went through were rough, I was there. We never asked each other for help. We just did it. It's like we were both heading in the same direction and just fell for each other along the way. Story 88. We had been dating for a few years. She encouraged me to be better while allowing me to be myself. She supported me in everything, and I supported her as well. We made each other very happy. I knew I had found the person I wanted to share each night with. Story 89. Not yet married, but still feel like I can speak to this. Because at our lowest points, we still fight better than anyone I have ever known. We are respectful, honest, and clear about what we are upset about. Then we logically address the issue as a team. Neither of us looks to win against the other because we both acknowledge that we are a team and that it is impossible to win against your own teammate. So we just discuss and communicate until the issue is resolved. We want us to win, not me, I, or you. The only win in our relationship is if it is us that wins together. Story 90. We went through a tough time in our relationship. She was unhappy and I was unhappy. However, she actively cultivates relationships with people who will tell her the truth while still being good friends, and she sought help. She didn't just say, "This feels bad. I won out. But she also wasn't a doormat. Seeing that she was someone who knew her worth and wasn't going to just bow down and give me my way, but who also knew that relationships take work and compromise sometimes, really let me know that this relationship could last. Not just coast on emotions until it doesn't feel good anymore, but last for a lifetime because we were both willing to put in the work. 6 years of marriage later, we have built a relationship that not only feels great in the good times, but can withstand anything life can throw at us. Every year has been better than the last, and wherever she is, that is my home. It is because we were both willing to put in hard work up front. Story 91. We were living 6 time zones apart, and the first time she went back home after staying at my place, I just knew that I could not live my life without her, and she would not be the one that got away. Driving home from the airport, there was nothing in my life apart from her, and she had just gotten on the plane home. Right then and there, I knew that we had to figure it out somehow. She came back 4 months later, and we got married with the attitude that it was going to force us to figure everything out and not give up. 21 years, 2 kids, and lots of trips across the Atlantic later, it is still worth everything we went through. Story 92. It seems to me that divorce rates are a strong indicator that knowing the other person is the one is not a prerequisite to marriage. Story 93. When I first met her, we seemed to hit it off and I asked her on a date. She said yes, but then texted me saying she had been seeing another guy. Even though it was just dating, she felt the need to check with him to see if they were going somewhere. I said okay, and she later contacted me saying that was over and asked if I still wanted to go on a date. I sent a screenshot to my friend, and we both thought, screw this girl, feeling like I was on the back burner. However, there was something refreshingly honest about how open she was with me. All I could think about was how easily she could have hidden that from me and continued dating the other guy on the side. Instead, she chose the uncomfortable but honest route. We are happily married with 2 toddlers now. Looking back, that first interaction is what I return to when I wonder why we have such trust in our relationship. Never once have I felt the need to look through her phone or worry about how she interacts with male coworkers. Story 94. Don't overthink it and don't worry about what others say. The majority do not experience love at first sight, second, or whenever. Story 95. I was always scared of commitment with girls. When things got serious, I would break it off because the thought of being with them for the rest of my life scared me. When I met my wife, it was the opposite. The thought of not being with her scared me. I proposed after our 3rd date, less than a month after we met. Tomorrow is our 18th anniversary. I am not saying what I did will work for everyone. I think I just got lucky. She is amazing. I can't believe she said yes. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.